His deep focus on social and humanitarian issues paved the way for his transition to Kailash Satyarthi Children's Foundation. Rishikesh KB is an academician and researcher. He has worked with eminent academic institutions and published articles in prestigious journals.
Thank you for that kind introduction. Thank also to the Kerala Literature Festival organizing team for giving us this opportunity to share some of the views, some of our observations, some of the concerns, and also give an overview of the foundation, which is set up by the Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi. To begin this conversation, could you just provide us with some insights about how this concept of Bal Mitra Gram evolved and where is it heading to?
Right. Thank you so much for having time for this very important conversation. A conversation which we generally don't hear in the cacophony of news that is beamed live on our televisions these days. But I must be conveying my thanks to the Kerala Literature Festival for choosing to focus on this. Just to go back in time, I think the concept of Bal Mitra Gram, which is the three Hindi words which signify child-friendly villages, that our movement really began in the year 2001. And this all started when Mrs. Sumedha Kailash, who is the co-founder of Bal Ashram, which is India's first childcare institution located at Viratnagar near Jaipur. She was passing by, and whenever she used to pass by a section of villages, she used to see the children were perpetually engaged in working at a time when they were supposed to be spending their productive years in school, in classrooms. That was the time when they were running errands for others, earning pittance for their families. So when this issue, that kept coming back, that the images kept coming back, and the thought that, what could we do? What could we do? So we realized that, one of the basic arguments why this cycle was being perpetuated is because I am poor, so there is no option for my offspring, be it a son or a daughter, but to work. So, especially when it comes to India and in the Indian context, in Indian hinterland, that girls, why do they need to study at all? They'll get married off as it is. So they were looked upon as burdens. So it was like as we all know, that though we have traveled a long way, but that societal, makeup, that mental makeup was there, very strong. So that kind of prompted us to start working on this, spending more time, which led eventually to the birth of child-friendly villages. Now, what is a child-friendly village? Now, as the name itself suggests, the children are at the fulcrum of the entire ecosystem that is built around the development of any village. And that is something that we realize that while one approach is to just relegate children to the sidelines, to the periphery, the other is to ensure that their voices are heard, their concerns are looked into, and that they are empowered so that they can go forward with their education, that they can stand on their own feet and they can, in their own right, break this cycle of poverty which was being perpetuated for generations. So we started this concept where we brought about this mindset change. First, making people understand the importance of education, why a child needs to be in school and not in an agricultural field or not in a workshop or not in a stone quarry. Or not, for that matter, being pushed into these rat hole mines from where mica is, picked up and used by all companies, mostly. So that kind of led to the birth of the child-friendly village movement. And today I'm very happy to share that, we are working in about 1,231 villages, or child-friendly communities as we call them, all across the country. And with specific pockets in states where traditionally these people have been really, really at the back of beyond, and no one has thought about them, including the denotified Banjara tribes of Rajasthan, who were looked upon with an eye of suspicion that they were criminals. So here the children go to school. There is 100% retention in school. There are 0 dropouts. And one major challenge that we have been able to overcome is bring down the incidence of child marriage. So child marriage, and we spearheaded that campaign of child marriage for India, which is still ongoing, and it's resonating all over the country. So it's literally, it's come down to a negligible 0.01% in some pockets. But we still know that there is no point for us to sit complacent. And this has continued, and children are empowered. So through a process of democratic elections, a child-friendly council is created on the lines of the panchayats that we see, which is there as a part of our electoral system, our democratic system. So these child leaders are elected, and today there are over 18,000 child leaders who are the voices of the voiceless in a way. So be it ensuring the presence of toilets in schools, be it ensuring that, bus stands are created so that children can have accessibility to schools, to ensuring that, that they are informing the lawmakers and the lawkeepers of if any instance of child marriage is coming to the fore, they are going from door to door to ensure that, not a single child goes through what possibly they have had to go through. So that's the full cycle that we have been really able to cover.
Quite inspiring. What's something which was really impressive is a lot of students whom they've picked up from various places are now the tutors and mentors for, that's the real empowerment model which they've built up. Now, the 7 key features of the Bal Mitra Mandal model, which I would quickly read because that gives an overview of what the model is. One, focusing on the child-centric community development, education and gender equality, prevention of child exploitation, right-based approach, sustainable and cost-effective models of child protection, community empowerment, and structural democratic reforms. Now, in addition to these, they've also come up with a very interesting model of urban compassionate community. Now, how different is it from the earlier model which you spoke about, and what makes it distinct? Is it just the geography that you work in, or are there different kind of interventions that you do?
Yes, so the idea was when we realized that while we were working in the villages, the problems, though the geographies were different, the problems in effect were the same or similar to a large extent. Like education, dropout from schools, they remain like the core driving factors. And for us, there is nothing that can compensate for education, that can ever match up to education. So when our activists started, moving around in the urban slums also, we started with Delhi, and now we are also working in Maharashtra, and we are going to other states as well. We realized that, even in children in urban slums, now these are children essentially of parents who have migrated from villages. So they have moved to villages, they have settled down in big cities in search of jobs, in search of some kind of work. But children have never really been their focal point. And they have been left to fend for themselves, which is why you saw that substance abuse was so high. Alcoholism, drug abuse is so high, so rampant in some cases. And of course, school never figured in the metrics. So we started our intervention, we started identifying, now these children are in a better place since they are located either within the urban centers, within the cities, or because of the proximity to these big cities. So the opportunities, quote unquote, or the exposure levels could actually be used for their benefit. And which is exactly where we decided that we did a skill mapping of children to understand that where their skill sets really lie. What is it that interests them? What is it that kind of takes them forward? So the Bal Mitra Mandal or the BMM model, which is an offshoot of the Bal Mitra Gram or the BMG, the child-friendly villages that I talked about model, essentially aims at identifying these children, honing their skills, ensuring their integration into schools, ensuring that there is zero dropout, and then channelizing them. And so I'm very happy to share today the stage that many of the children that we have worked with, some have today grown up to become microbiologists, some are lawyers who are in fact fighting for cases in the Supreme Court on behalf of children who are being rescued from child labor and child slavery even now. This is an issue which we hardly talk about. Only yesterday when I was waiting at the Bombay airport to board the flight, we got news that 13 children have actually been rescued in the dead of the night from a bangle making factory in Jaipur. Now, Jaipur, we all know, is a huge tourist destination. And bangle making is something like, that the state prides itself in. But the amount of children who are pushed into those sweatshops to work, it's unthinkable. So these children, when they are brought in, so we ensure that they become ambassadors. So they are the young change makers Some are pursuing PhD, some have grown up to become lawyers, some are microbiologists, as I said, some are in the hotel industry, some are university fellows, like the Ashoka University, some students are studying there. So they are also taking their voice, as I said last time, that, when we were speaking earlier, that they're the voice for the voiceless. So be it the United Nations, be it the ILO headquarters in Geneva, be it any other international platforms, they are the ones who now stand proudly and talk about their story and tell the world that, what they have not been doing and what they ought to be doing to ensure that no other child in any other part of the world actually goes through this, what they have suffered.
Quite interesting. Now, there's also a lot of emphasis on ensuring sustainability. Sustainability has become a buzzword of not just the corporate, but also every organization. Now, how is it that you ensure sustainability in the models that you've developed, both in the rural as also in the urban spaces?
Right. So, just to bring this into context, that, Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, who's spearheading the Kailash Satyarthi Children's Foundation and the Satyarthi Movement for Global Compassion, he's also an UN SDG advocate, one of the 17 advocates who were picked up by the UN Secretary General. So the SDGs are extremely aligned to the scope of our work, and that's where sustainability kicks in for us also. So we work on two levels. While the SDGs lay a lot of emphasis in ensuring that children are pulled out of labor, that, besides the other aspects that we look into the global issues, particularly with respect to children, that education is never compromised. And we, through our network, we ensure that. As far as economic viability and sustainability of the parental ecosystem of these children are concerned, that's also something that falls under our thought when it comes to sustainability for these models. So we have been able to break that mold that, I am poor, so I have to work. How? By linking them with the social welfare schemes of the government. So many cases we have seen, like I talked about the Banjara communities who we work with, they have been denotified tribes, migratory tribes, they have been moving from one place to the other in search of livelihood. So the basic requirements that we all have, you and I have, everyone here has an Aadhaar card, a basic identity document that is required for accessing the social welfare schemes, a basic bank account where the government can transfer. Everything was like a distant dream. They had never heard of it. So our foundation, our movement works towards ensuring that they have these cards, then we do the linkages so that that money flow is constant. Then they are linked to all the other livelihood options. So through our internal system, we map them again with what they would want to do and link them with other partners. So we work with a lot of partner organizations within India and abroad. That's what we do. As far as children, we believe that, if we empower the children, like they are the building blocks. So you can't really build a house if, your foundation is weak. It's going to fall one day or the other. So from 2001 to now, that building is only getting stronger.
In addition to empowering the children, don't you think the parents and the community itself has to be sometimes even educated about
Absolutely.
the need to? So what are the kind of interventions that you do in addition to children's empowerment?
So absolutely, because this we cannot achieve without taking the parent or the parental ecosystem, as I said, into confidence. First is like a huge roadblock was to tell them that, look, why education is important, why your child needs to study and not go to work. Would you like to have or see, for instance, that your child also grows up under similar circumstances, continues to labor all his life just because you have done and you had no option? There are options. We are here to help you. Do the hand-holding. So please come forward. Don't let a child be abused, because this is also, child labor is akin to child abuse. So don't fall into these gullible traps. We are here to guide you. So besides that, monitoring that ecosystem, what we have also done through our model, we have created youth clubs or the Yuva Mandals. We have created women clubs or women mandals. Now, these areas, as I said, some of the most backward areas that we have worked in. So we have seen that, children from different castes will not sit together. Communities will not see eye to eye. They will not be sitting together, talking together. We have seen that, women will not be sharing the same dais with men. They will not be even in the same vicinity if you have a couple of chairs, because the gender divide is so pronounced. And that Wales system that, women are meant to be in Wales, that we have challenged. So, it's been through a process of changing, talking, taking them into confidence and telling them what they can do, what mothers can do for their girls. If mothers don't stand up for their girls, who will? If fathers don't stand up for their daughters, who will? So that is how we have brought about this change. We have empowered not just the children over here, we have empowered brothers to stand up for sisters and vice versa. So don't let, so if a sister sees a brother being pushed into labor, taken out of school, the sister becomes really the mascot to stand up to the parents eye to eye and say, what you're doing is wrong. Similarly, we have had cases where girls have actually stood up against child marriages themselves when they heard that their marriages were being fixed, which was absolutely unthinkable. So they have said, if you do not intervene, if you do not stop, I'm going to be informing the police. And so, that has acted as a deterrent. So I would urge everyone over here, and I see a lot of young faces, please take out time, come down, connect with us, and come down to these villages and see the power of transformation that is actually sweeping through these villages, which no one really talks about.
You also, in your conversation, thrice mentioned about the Banjara community. Now, and you have set up something called Banjara Education Centers, focusing on the first generation learners from the nomadic Banjara learners. Now, what exactly is your intervention there?
So the Banjaras, as the name suggests, so they are the nomadic communities. And traditionally what has happened is they have always been looked upon with an eye of suspicion, like they were the criminals, as it were, outcasts. So like a group comes and they settle down on the outskirts of a village. They try to find some work. And when that work finishes, they migrate again. And they generally have large families. So what happens to the children? The children are never in school or anywhere near school. The children, because they don't stay anywhere, for a longer period of time, they do not have access to the government welfare schemes. They do not have basic identity cards to prove that they're Indian citizens, So we identified those gaps. We talked to them. Again, gender divide was very, very pronounced. A caste divide was very pronounced. So we have worked on all that, and we have told them that, look, this is where the world is moving. This is where what you can do. And this is how you yourself, you have the power within you. Just, don't take a step back. I would say that, take steps forward. It's been a long journey. It's been a very arduous journey, but we were very successful in opening up these Banjara education centers. So as of now, we have 13 Banjara education centers, which are essentially non-formal schools, because many of them, as I said, are first generation learners. They've never been to school. So we tried to introduce them to the alphabet. We try to tell them what the number system is. Then gradually the level of education in a way goes up, where we have trained teachers who are working with them, many of them who have actually been rescued by us in the past. And then once they are tuned, we see that they are up to a level, they are then integrated with the mainstream education. So with the formal education. So these children, they are like powerhouses in themselves, So they come from, and I must tell about this one particular girl who comes to my mind as we talk about the Banjaras. She's a sprightly girl. Tara Banjara is her name. She comes from a nondescript village. Possibly you won't even find in India's map when you start looking at the atlas, near Viratnagar. So she has been training. She's done her physics honors. She's the first girl to have ever passed class 10th from the Banjara community. She stopped her own child marriage. She stopped the child marriage of her sisters. And she now goes from village to village advocating against child marriage. She is training to become a police officer. So every morning, at 4 in the morning, she wakes up and she runs for about 10 kilometers one way. And she's saying, my physical fitness is also of equal importance. She's done her physics honors and she wants to get into policing. So we said that, why police? Said, because we have seen, so her answer, and the answer was like that, we have seen that whenever our community has been the easiest to blame our community for anything, kahin pe kuch chori ho gaya, something has been stolen somewhere, so I blame our community. So we are like sitting ducks. And the atrocities that have been perpetrated on us. So if I become a police officer, I will stand up for my entire community. So I will be the shield that will cover my community. So that's like the power, that's the conviction of these youngsters.
So you've been working pan-India, probably, are there global interventions as well? Is your organization going global as well in terms of your efforts to empower the children? If yes, do you find any sort of a divide or region-wise, which is alarming, and or is that a pan-Indian scenario? This child, whatever trafficking and so many other things that you spoke about.
So, globally, we do work in about 140 countries, and physically, it's not possible to be present everywhere, but we do have very dedicated partner organizations who we work with. We work very closely at two levels. One at the policy level, where we work with the United Nations and the UN bodies, including the ILO. We work very closely, with other decision-making bodies, like the OECD, which in terms of which boils down to the fund allocation that is required. We work with very big global corporations who realize what's happening here and where the interventions are needed. Also on the ground level, to bring about societal change and ground change, we rely a lot on our partners. So I don't know if you're aware, but Mr. Satyarthi actually spearheaded the global march against child labor, so which went through 140 countries. So 3 marches, they converged at one point, and then they marched to the ILO headquarters in Geneva, spanning a distance of 80,000 kilometers. So we had huge participation from global leaders, from other Nobel laureates, from world leaders, from presidents, prime ministers, kings and queens, wherever we've gone. And that was the first time that the doors of the United Nations, at the UN Geneva offices, they were opened up for the civil society. So we marched into that hall with former child slaves, so who had come out of the rut, and they wanted the world to wake up and take note what was happening. So following that and following intense, deliberations and discussions, the Charter 182 got adopted by ILO, and that's now the only universally adopted charter against worst forms of child labor that is in vogue. So that is completely through his efforts. So which is why we see that, there is a lot of scope for intervention, especially the problem is pronounced when it comes to the developing world and in sub-Saharan Africa. So sub-Saharan Africa is one area where we have seen that the number of children who are engaged as child labor, that graph, while it was kind of coming down, it suddenly shot up, and that is pre-COVID. So there is no justification to hide behind the veil that it's COVID. So if you go by the ILO figures, the United Nations figures, it shows the alarming rise in terms of number of children. 160 million children who continue to be in child labor, and we are still waiting for the fresh set of data to come, so maybe the figure has even grown higher. So which is why at the 5th ILO conference on elimination of child labor, which was held in Durban in 2022, we raised this point and we said, and the President of South Africa, the Director General of ILO were all on the same stage as us, and so was Tara, the girl I just talked about. And we said that, look, the world cannot just be coming down together, gathering these fancy conferences, talk and say that we will do, and again 4 years later we come back and we are back to where we were. So we need concrete action, we need concrete results, and that is where I think the core of what Mr. Satyarthi's movement is all about. That is where the core stems from.
Yeah. I would quickly like to read out some of the statistics which Sir had shared with me in terms of the kind of impact that this organization has created. 15,87,742 lives have been impacted, with 1,231 compassionate communities, which Sir spoke about a while back. 1,575 child survivors reintegrated into the society, and 9,583 women got trained in vocational skills. So the kind of work which they've done is something really, really commendable. Now, probably before we open up this platform for the audience, a lot of them would be interested being a part of your organization. So how is it that the ordinary people could, are there student chapters of this organization? Are there university chapters or educational institutes? So how do we connect with this organization?
So, well, we do have volunteering programs and we do have internship programs. And a lot of students from different universities in India and abroad, they do come down, sorry, and spend time with us. and work with the children, work with the youth, go to these communities to try and see that, how more they can be effectively engaged as far as this is concerned. So we would really appreciate if there are, anyone would want to join. We would be very happy. So you can look us up at the Satyarthi Movement for Global Compassion, SMGC. And we strongly believe that all of us have a tiny little hummingbird in us. That hummingbird we have to just let free. That hummingbird will tell us to do our bit. And if in our individual capacities we can do our bit, we can understand the suffering of others as our own suffering and do something that we would do if something had been troubling us, I think all of us can make meaningful difference to the world together.
Okay, before we wrap up, for the information of the audience, the book written by Kailash Satyarthi, the translation of the book, which probably sir can, as the last comment on this topic, the translation of this book is getting released tomorrow, and Kailash Satyarthi himself is here for the valedictory and also for a conversation with us. So could you just talk a bit about the book and then wrap up the discussions if there aren't any questions?
Yeah. So the book is called Why Didn't You Come Sooner, which has been authored by Kailash Satyarthi, and this book essentially is a chronicle of stories of children whose lives he has been able to touch, stories of children who he has saved during the span of his 40 years of this activism and journey, and specific case studies which have actually led to policy level changes, be it in India or abroad. So this book has been released by Speaking Tiger Books. The English version is also available in this fair, and the Malayalam edition is also been, Mr. Ravi DC himself took very keen interest to get this book translated, and the Malayalam edition is also out now. So I would urge that all of you, if you can lay your hands on the book, Why Didn't You Come Sooner in English, and the Malayalam edition as well. So that would definitely be an eye-opener for everyone.
We are open for questions, but not as a part of this discussion. We are available here for another 5 to 10 minutes. We can have a conversation later. Thank you once again, Kerala Literature Festival, and Sourav sir for being here, sharing your quite inspiring story about the foundation and the kind of activities, making us more informed about the work that you're doing. Thank you all for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.